This video is your walkthrough of this week's semester project worksheet for the methods section. I've uploaded this demo for you to the semester project module on D2L, but I just want to walk through my process. So I completed the worksheet as if I was a student taking this class and doing this assignment. I note up here first, when you're filling out the methods section, you're going to want to have your Pallant textbook handy, because in the back of the book is most of the information that you're going to need in order to complete the different components to the worksheet. Included is a paragraph describing where the sample came from in the context of the data collection. It also includes a list of the scales that were used and includes references for each of those scales, because whenever we include a description of scales that we have used that are published by other researchers, you both cite those references and you include them on your reference page. Pallant also includes for you how the different questionnaires, the different scales are responded to by participants, and then the scoring information, like which items are recoded and which items are not, and then how are scale scores calculated, what's the lowest possible score you could get, the highest possible score, and so on. So on pages 337 through 341 is where all that information is for your work on the methods section. In response to method sections in an APA-style research report, they're broken up into two subheadings. Now I've included here, this section of the paper, you always use the word method, you put it centered and in bold. The first subheading is participants. It is left, justified, and in bold. The first question you're going to want to answer in writing your paragraphs for the method section is, how and where were the participants recruited? Now, Pallant in her text doesn't give you a tremendous amount of information here. So basically, that the participants were from members of the general public in Melbourne, Australia. You know that this was a class project completed by graduate diploma in educational psychology students who were in Dr. Pallant's class. Now, I did cite, as I constructed this sentence, I did note that that's where this data comes from, and I cited the source. I made a guess here that the probable sampling technique was convenience sampling, since it was a student project. Now, the next part that's usually in a participant section is a description of the demographics. And I should have noted this on the original version of the worksheet, but in order to get this information, Pallant gives you a little bit of it, but you need to use SPSS. You've now done a homework on running frequencies and running descriptives to get this information. So you'll need to open up your survey.save data file, and you will need to get frequencies for the variables sex, marital status, children living at home, highest level of education. What I would like you to use is the recoded version that has a smaller number of categories, major sources of stress, and the question, do you smoke? Then I want you to run descriptive statistics for age, which is a quantitative variable, and the number of cigarettes smoked per week is the other quantitative demographic variable. Now, writing a summary of the descriptives is always kind of annoying. There are some conventions that you need to be aware of, and some formatting rules that you should be aware of. One real common mistake that students make is an old grammar rule. You cannot start sentences with a numeral, so you have to write it out. You could address this by writing the number out, as I've done in this paragraph, or you can restructure the sentence so that you don't have to. Some other kind of formatting things. You are permitted with percentages to round up to a whole number if you want to. With standard deviations, the convention is to round to 1 decimal point. Who makes these rules? I have no idea. APA style also, when you're reporting statistics, the statistic values like standard deviation, the way that's written is an uppercase SD in italics. Notice that there are spaces around the equal sign. So it's SD space, equal sign space, and then the number. Same goes with the number of subjects. If you're talking about the entire sample, it's a capital N. If you're talking about a subgroup within the sample, it's a small n. And the n's, regardless of whether they're upper or lowercase, are in italics. Again, there is a space between the letter and the equal sign, and between the equal sign and the number. So I've given summaries here of the values. I'll leave you to read that yourself. I do want to just point out, because it's a point of interest, that there was someone in the data set who smokes a lot of cigarettes. Lordy, per week, 280 cigarettes. That's a lot of smokes. And I wanted to, just out of pure curiosity, I do not expect you to do this. I split the sample and looked, and that I really strongly suspect the person typed in the wrong value, or they're just a true outlier in the sample, because look at this standard deviation of 69. That's just humongous. Anyway, I digress. Another section, and you will notice that if you were paying attention to the details of your research articles, there are lots of different ways to choose subheadings within a method section. The base version is to say participants, design, materials, and procedure. That's the basic version. You will see variations of that in various journals. And you may even find that it makes more sense for you in your future life writing papers that you use different subheadings. I will also note that when you're doing research with animals, or you're doing neuroscience research or more biopsychology research, sometimes there's a tendency to use words like apparatus instead of materials, and so on. So you might notice differences like that out there. But we're going to use the base model and go with participants, design, materials, and procedure. So design, and it's usually in a study of this size a pretty short sentence or two. Basically with this study, it's a correlational design. And over here in my parenthetical, I noted, how do I know this? I know this because I know that there was no experimental manipulation. Any between groups differences that you would want to test, like maybe making a comparison based on sex or education level, or even when age is divided into groups, those are naturally occurring groups. You haven't randomly assigned anyone to a group. So it's non-experimental research. The factors that are being explored in this correlational study, typically what researchers do is they put in here their core variable. In other words, the variable they want to explain. So that's what I did here, but this is also the point of the research that Pallant students conducted. They really wanted to look at factors that were predictive of well-being or psychological adjustment. All right, identifying the variables. Now, you could take the approach of just naming all of them that are in our data set. What I would prefer that you do, and again, this is something I should have included in the original worksheet, only include the ones you are actually using in your project. So for me, when I chose variables for this assignment, I chose, let's see, life satisfaction, optimism, perceived stress, and then I also wanted to make comparisons by age. So the scales measure all of these things, but in your sentence, what you should write is only include the variables that you are interested in. So if I were to rewrite this sentence, I would say that the scales measured life satisfaction, optimism, and perceived stress. Okay, materials. And I've modeled for you how to do this. This is usually a pretty formulaic part of the method section. And your job here, if any of you bake or cook using recipes, think of this as the ingredient list. This is where you are mapping out for your reader exactly what tools and techniques you used in order to collect the data. Now, why do we do this? We do this so that the next person down the road who really wants to understand your research and may want to replicate it knows exactly how you did the work that you did. So I note here, and I put here in red on my demo sheet, only describes the ones that you chose to look at. So if you look at the full survey with all of the measures, you've got a total of 95 items. 9 of the items are demographic variables. The other 86 items are measures of the various variables. So for me, since I'm using life satisfaction, optimism, and perceived stress as my variables, I did keep all of the demographic variables, which I've already described in my participants paragraph. And then I looked in the Palette book to remind myself how many items are on each of these scales. And I added them up, and there are a total of 30 items. 9 of those are demographic variables. The remaining 21 items are make up the measures of life satisfaction, optimism, and perceived stress. Then you need to describe in detail, enough detail, that a reader would know what you were doing, such that when they get into the results section, they can make an interpretation. So I start off by saying life satisfaction was measured using a 5-item life satisfaction scale, or satisfaction with life scale, and I give the reference, the citation for the person, the researchers who created the satisfaction with life scale. The new APA style rules state that you don't have to cite all of the authors the first time. You can now just, with multiple authors, 3 or more, that is, you can go straight to Diener et al. Please notice that et is a word, it means and. AL is an abbreviation. It stands for alia, meaning and others, and it's AL period, followed by a comma, and then the year of publication. Response is made on a 7-point scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Total scale score is calculated by summing the items. The range is from 5 to 35, which looks off to me. I'm going to check that. Hang on. Nope, that's right. I just had a brain moment. Hopefully you'll forgive me for having a brain moment every now and then. I was having problems with multiplication in my head. Anyway, optimism, that's a 6-item scale. Responses are made to the questions on a 5-point agree-disagree scale. This time you have 3 items that are reverse scored. You don't need to name the items for the reader. The range of possible scores, and it is a total score from 6 to 30. Higher scores reflect greater optimism. And with the life satisfaction measure, higher scores reflect greater life satisfaction. Perceived stress, measured using the perceived stress scale. Same kind of idea. You're getting a total scale score. The range is from 10 to 50, with higher scores indicating greater perceived stress. Now here I had to make some assumptions, given that Pallant is teaching a methods course and having her students collect data. I assume they used an informed consent and debriefing form because everybody has to. So you could say that other materials included informed consent and debriefing forms. Under procedure, and with a study of this kind, this can be very short. Basically, participants were given informed consent forms to read and sign. After doing so, participants were given the survey instrument. After completing the survey, participants were given the debriefing form. And that's really all you need to say. We don't really have a good estimate of how long it would take them to complete the survey, so I didn't include that information. For future reference, if you're collecting your own data, you will know roughly how long it takes people to complete, say, a survey instrument, so you'll want to provide an estimate there. So that is my walkthrough of the methods section worksheet. Now, when you get to the point of putting your paper together, the things that you write here, these sentences and paragraphs, you should be able, after you get feedback and refine them, you should be able to copy and paste these into your methods section, and then you'll have that part of your paper completed.